When you think of countries that produce great watches, Thailand probably isn't the first to jump to mind, but Wise Watches out of Thailand has been making an effort to change that. Previously, I've reviewed 2 of their watches and I was thoroughly impressed both times, to the point where I would put Wise in the running for best affordable micro brand out there. But the 2 watches I reviewed before are more in their premium line, priced around $600 and up. But today we're going to check out one of their more affordable watches. This comes from their Hitman line of dive watches. So take a quick look at it and then let's jump into it. Hey guys, welcome back to Just the Watch. My name's Dave. I live in Japan and I love to collect affordable watches. And today we're going to be taking a look at this watch from Wise, and I'm excited to check it out for a number of reasons. Again, for one, because this is a more affordable option from them, so I want to see how it holds up against other lower priced watches. Is Wise going to be able to excel at this $400 price point as they were at $600? That's what we want to see. The other thing I want to check out is the LUME. Now, if you guys have been watching the channel for a while, you know that I really appreciate a watch that glows in the dark. So much so that I developed a testing system to be able to rank how powerful the LUME is on different watches. The first watch that Wise sent me was their Adamascus dive watch, which completely obliterated my test. So I'll be looking forward to putting this through my J-score testing to see how it compares to other watches. I'm curious to check that out as well. The other thing that's really cool about this watch is that Wise is offering a ton of different customization options. And I mean an insane number of customization options. They've got 3 different bezel colors with 3 different finishes. You can have the crown on the right or the left side. They've got 6 different secondhand colors that you can choose from. So I've never seen a brand do this. So it's really cool to be able to go on and really fun to be able to pick colors that you like and finishes that you like, and especially to be able to choose whether you want the crown on the right or left side. Now, big thanks to Wise for giving me this watch to review. I don't have to send it back, which is why you saw the paid promotions flag at the beginning of this video. However, other than the watch itself, Wise did not provide any compensation for this review, nor did they have input into the content of this review. So with all that out of the way, let's jump in and check out this new special edition Wise Hitman. The Hitman from Wise is meant to be their entry-level watch, their kind of more affordable one. The standard editions are currently priced at $313. For this full LUME special edition, the price jumps up to $418. The main differences between the 2 editions seem to be the full LUME dial option on this one, and then this one is also a no-date version, so it comes with a Seiko NH38, which is a no-date automatic movement, whereas the standard editions go with an NH35 and include a date at 3 o'clock. Other than that, the specifications seem to be pretty much identical, so it is kind of a big jump in price to get that full LUME dial. And the NH38 is a little bit harder to get a hold of than the NH35, so that tends to add a little bit to the cost, but again, not much. So the $100 jump is mostly going to be for that full LUME dial, but holy cow, did they do an insane job on the LUME on this thing. We're going to get into that in a minute, but this thing just completely destroyed every other watch that I have tested, and I think I've tested around 100 different watches for LUME brightness. But before we get into that, let's talk about what this watch is. Size-wise, this one wears great at a 41mm diameter case, 48mm lug to lug, and only 12mm thick, which is pretty good for a 200-meter dive watch with a Seiko NH38 movement inside of it. I found this to be one of the most comfortable dive watches on a metal bracelet that I've worn. The size and proportions just seem completely perfect for my 7.5-inch wrist. Very unobtrusive and really fun to wear. The bracelet starts at 20mm at the case and then tapers very sharply down to 16mm at the clasp. And that taper, combined with the very glossy ceramic bezel and the polished bevels on this watch, really give it kind of a dressy look. In style, this is kind of a dress diver or a desk diver in the sense that it is a dive watch that has all of the functionalities that you would need to go scuba diving with it, but it will look great with a suit or with business attire, so very versatile watch there. And since I don't go scuba diving myself, desk divers are kind of my favorite class of dive watch. If you want to get away with just one watch that you can use for anything, this is the kind of watch that'll do that. And for $418, they are giving you a lot of great features. Ceramic bezel, sapphire crystal with anti-reflective coating, and really well done finishing. The watch is primarily brushed with very fine, high-quality brushwork, but with polished bevels along the corners of the lugs and down the side of the case. The distinction between the brushing and the polishing is razor sharp and very crisp. Likewise, when you look down at the dial, the handset is very finely cut. There's no rough edges at all, and those applied markers really look beautiful. The handset and the markers are both high polished, and they look great sitting on top of that kind of milky white fully lume dial. Now, this dial is only going to look milky white like that in very bright light. If you get into even slightly dim light, it's going to start turning blue because it has a very strong blue glow. So most of your time indoors with this watch is going to be with a slightly bluish hue to the dial, and that is intentional for a watch that has lume of this quality. Now, as far as style goes, this is a very good looking watch that is pretty understated. There's nothing big about it. There's nothing weird about it. Everything is pretty simple, but just done to an extremely high quality. This watch looks great and is eye-catching, not because it has really big, bold design elements, but because everything just has a really good look of polish and quality to it. I went with the red bezel with a second hand that has a red tip, and I really like that color combination. That red and white is not something that I have in my collection, and I've really been enjoying it. It's a different color scheme than I normally wear, but it works really well. Likewise, the watch feels very well built. The bracelet has a great fluidity to it, and it's very comfortable on the wrist. It's not rattly or squeaky at all. It also features screw links, which makes it very easy to size. However, you do need to be careful to check these screws every now and then. They do have a tendency to work themselves loose, which is very common in bracelets that feature screw links. The side of the bezel has what looks like a very fine double coin edge that actually gives you a lot of grip on your fingertips, which is appreciated because the bezel action is pretty stiff here. It does take some effort to turn. I experienced the same thing on the last dive watch from Wise that I tested. This is going to be kind of a preference thing. I think it should be a little bit lighter and easier to turn, but if you like a very firm feeling bezel action, this will give you that. The clicks are very sharp, very precise. There is no backplay, and it's a 120 click unidirectional bezel. Pretty much every aspect of this watch, from the finishing to the build quality to the components to the lume, exceeds what I would expect to see from a micro-brand watch at $418, with the exception of the movement and the clasp. Both of those are good, and those are typically what you would expect at a watch in this price range. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the choice of a Seiko NH38A automatic movement, or with the choice of this basic milled clasp that does feature 3 micro adjustments. But when everything else about the watch feels much more premium, it might be a little bit jarring to see just those 2 aspects of it, maybe taking the whole watch down a little bit. But if there's one area that completely exceeds all expectations, it's with the level of brightness on the lume on this watch. 2 years ago, I came up with a method to test how bright lume is on watches so that I could track and compare different watches that I have in for review to see which one is actually brighter in the dark. And over the last 2 years, I think I've tested about 100 different watches. So when I say that the lume on this watch is mind-blowingly bright, I think there's some weight behind that statement. And before I tell you the score that this watch got on my testing system, I want to put a little bit of context in here. Seiko is commonly recognized as having some of the best lume in the industry, at least among major watch brands. Micro brands will often jump above what Seiko does, but among mass-produced watches, Seiko is pretty much king. So this whole lume score is based around Seiko as being the standard, so your standard entry-level Seiko divers will usually test around a 10 on this scale. So if something scores a 5, it would be half as bright as a Seiko, and there's been quite a few watches that have tested around a 5, and if something scored like a 20, that would be insane, but it would be twice as bright as a Seiko. Now, what some people might find surprising is that Seiko's little brother Orient tends to actually beat them when it comes to lume, and the Orient Komatsu, which is incredibly popular and very affordable, scores a 12, besting out Seiko's entry-level dive watches. Generally, to get higher scores than that, you kind of have to branch into micro brands, and among micro brands, there's a few that are really well respected for their lume. The Swiss watch company is one that comes quickly to mind. Their recent Hyper G is the highest I've seen from them, which scored a 14. And Zelos is also highly regarded for doing excellent lume on their watches and producing some insanely bright pieces. The brightest one from Zelos that I've tested scored an 18, which is pretty insane, 80% brighter than Seiko's entry-level dive watches. But Wise has been beating them all. This isn't the first watch from Wise that I've tested. I've done 2 more, and both of those scored a 22, which is just crazy. Wise has been sitting at the top of my lume charts for about a year now, And so when they set out to do this full loomed edition of the Hitman, I think they wanted to prove something because the results I got on this are just insane. This watch scored a 25 on my J-score scale, a full 2.5 times as bright as Seiko's dive watches, a full 7 points higher than the brightest watch from any other brand that I've tested. And if you're thinking, well, it's because it's a full lume dial, note that this testing system tests the brightness of a specific point. So it's not about the area. I'm testing individual points on the watch. So just the dial on this watch glows far brighter than the handset or the markers of any other watch that I've tested. When it comes to the very specific measurement of how brightly a watch glows in the dark, which admittedly is not an incredibly important part of a watch, but it is something that's kind of cool. And when you look at that one specific area, this watch from Wise, I would put it up against pretty much any other watch that I am aware of. I have not tested luxury watches, but I've seen Jody's LUME series where he has thrown some Rolexes in there, and they tend to fare pretty well against some of the micro brands, but they're not doing anything like this watch is putting out here. So in this one very specific metric, this $418 watch is going to outperform a watch that costs $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. And that thought just kind of puts a smile on my face. All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up for today. Drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you think of this watch. And if you have any experience with other watches from Wise in general, always like to get some good opinions of the brands that we're checking out here, especially when it comes to micro brands, because they don't have as long of a track record. So I think it's really important to get a lot of different viewpoints. And that's where I think people in the comments can be very helpful in helping others decide whether or not this is a good watch to purchase. Quality and finishing wise, I think this watch is an excellent value. I love all of the customization options. The one customization thing I wish that it had that it doesn't have is the option to choose date or no date. But I think Wise likes to match the appropriate movement with a watch to avoid giving a ghost date. And so if they were going to give you the choice of date or no date, they would probably also have to give you the choice of other movements. And maybe that would have just been a little bit too difficult to do. I pretty much have to have a date on a watch that I'm going to wear on a regular basis. But I know that there's a lot of people that are exactly the opposite. So you can chime in with that down in the comments if you want below as well. If you like this video, please hit the like button down below. If you want to see more videos about affordable watches and great micro brands, I ask you to subscribe as well. There are a lot of micro brands out there, and I get a ton of requests from micro brands to review watches, and I turn down probably 80 to 90% of them. So I try to pick only the ones that I think are the most interesting, the most worth your time. So if you're looking for reviews on the best micro brands out there, again, please hit the subscribe button. That'll wrap it up for today. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.